Well, I received a 20-year sentence in 1997 for drugs and handgun violation. I was taken in custody by local police, went to court and received a null process. However, I was a felon in possession of a handgun, and the feds had picked the case up. I had just gotten married a year before. I went to trial. They wanted me to plead guilty. Didn't do it. I went to trial. I received 20 years, basically, 239 months with the feds. I was emotionally distraught because, as I said, I had just gotten married. I had young children. I was employed, right? I left Baltimore City Jail, and they had taken me to Pennsylvania to a federal prison, Schuylkill. During this time, they were experiencing the remnants of the '95 riots because of the cocaine crack law. People were being moved around. I reached my destination there. There was a lot of talk about how federal prison was a lot different from state prison, that you would meet people from all over the world. You would run into senators and drug lords and these major political figures, the Italian mobsters, and all of that proved true. I had got there, a lot of guys from Baltimore, D.C., Philadelphia, New York was present at that institution. Basically, the guys from Baltimore had received me with open arms because I was a guy who had went to trial, had not copped out, and was considered, as a rat, So I received a lot of gifts and stuff from people who I had knew from Baltimore and people who I did not know because I was considered as a stand-up guy, right? Plus I had notoriety because I was a guy who was in the street and had a name for myself, as being a drug boy and considered a go-for-bad guy, right? Being there, I stayed in Schuylkill for about a year or something and got in an altercation. Was sent to the SHU. From there, they had shipped me out, and I went to Beckley, West Virginia, in a medium security institution, where I met a lot of guys also from Baltimore, gang members. D.C. was just closing Lawton, and a lot of guys from D.C. was flooding the institution. But the experience going in the federal institution, because I had been in state prison, so I was familiar with being incarcerated, right? But I had not experienced being so far away from home, having been married and your wife coming to visit you and bringing your children, so that I wasn't a recipient of a lot of visits, I went years without visits. But the housing in the federal institutions was, we considered it luxurious, considered to state, we wasn't so closed in. It was, a lot of freedom there, especially with the food and stuff like that, right? But again, I was emotionally drained, because I was in love, and as I said, I had young children. He was about seven years old, right? And that brought a lot of stress on me. And going in, I was 32 years old, going in, and you know, being away, you know, all kind of stuff is in your head because your wife, you know, 20 years, you saying, damn, should I ask it away from me? She's going to be with somebody, and, you know, all of that stuff goes through your head. So I experienced a lot of stress in the beginning, but as time went on, you know, there was some relief. You know, and I got into school, religious services and stuff like that. And I made some good strides being in there. You know, completed school, went to college, right? I was reared in the Nation of Islam, right, for a period of time. Moved to different prisons. You know, I went Oklahoma, California, as I said, Pennsylvania, West Virginia, New Jersey, Fort Dix, right? In fact, I was released from Fort Dix in 2013 is when I was released from federal prison, right? Well, in different institutions, there were different characteristics expressed in terms of the officers, but predominantly who was incarcerated, of course, they were, you know, African Americans, blacks, right? And there was a constant cry for justice because we would receive the most time for the least, right, in opposed to our counterparts, you know, Caucasian or whites and so forth, right? But we were predominantly those who were incarcerated. We were predominantly the ones who was in the law library trying to find relief from what we perceived as being wrongly sentenced, right? The guards, depending on where you were at, if you was down in the South Atlanta and stuff like that, you know, you had guards who were black guards, right? And there was much more welcoming spirit there because you perceive you being among your own kind, right? And opposed to being up north, you had a lot of, you know, whites and stuff who was who were in the guards. But there is a perception that when you are in institutions who are ran by blacks, it doesn't function that well, right? But if you are in institutions that's ran by whites, it's orderly, right? So it was a difference depending on where you were. It was also a difference in terms of the prison population who was in control. You know, if you was down in Texas, you know, the Mexicans was, you know, if you were, you know, up north, you know, you had, you know, the Latin Kings, and if you was in the Midwest, you had the Gangster Disciples, and, you know, you out west, you know, the Crips and the Bloods and stuff like that, right? Those of us who were from the East Coast, because Baltimore, even though we were the last state in the South coming up, we was considered as the East Coast. So going out west, those of us who was on the East Coast, whether you was from Baltimore, Philly, DC, all of us was considered homies together when we was out west and like that. So depending on where you were at, you saw different characteristics, right? And you saw different power shifts depending on where you were at, right? No matter where we went at, if you was a man, you was respected as a man, you know, as long as you wasn't had that tag on you as being a rat or something like that, you was embraced, right? And that's how it went. You know, so. But there was solidarity with the inmates. Sometimes this solidarity was based on if we were ready to go to war with the Mexicans, you know, blacks would come together, right? So there was a solidarity there. In my opinion, there was a lot of respect that was given to inmates from the guards because their mission was to maintain the orderly function of the institution. And so they would confide in us a lot of times, you know, and they would allow us to quell a lot of the problems there. You know, I could go to the captain's office and inquire about a certain person who was taken to the hole or whatever, and tell the captain, I got him, and the captain would say, okay, you got him, you know, this, that, and he would, you know, release him. So there was a respect in a certain bond that was present on the part of the guards and on the part of the prisoners, right? Sometimes there was violence, you know, killings and stabbings. Some for some that were justified, some was foolish, right? However, it did happen. In my experience, I was one of the guys who was considered an honest broker. I could speak a little Spanish. By me being in an institution for a period of time, I was privileged to play a leadership role and be able to negotiate problems and deal with people from other states and cities and stuff like that. But whenever I was unable to bring peace, sometimes there were fights and stabbings and stuff like that. Well, everybody had a job. You could not be on the compound and did not have a job unless you had a doctor's note that you was disabled or unable to work. But everybody had a job. Everybody had to be up 7:30 in the morning. You either had to go to school, to work. You know, people had different jobs, but if you didn't work, you still had to get out of the building. You couldn't just lay in the bed. You could go to the gymnasium. They had weights, you know, basketball, football, baseball. The last institution that I was in was Fort Dix. That's the biggest federal prison in the United States. It's on a military base. And you had two sides, the east side and the west side. And it was relatively spacious. At that time, that was the only institution where prisoners could stay out to 10 o'clock at night and walk the compound. But me, myself, every day, I would get up 5 o'clock in the morning. 5 o'clock in the morning, you know, as a Muslim, we make prayer. So we get up 5 o'clock in the morning, go downstairs. The kitchen would open at 6 o'clock. The kitchen would open. You go to the kitchen, eat breakfast. The kitchen was also a place where if new guys came on the compound, you would meet them early in the morning, because the process when you come in as a new person on the compound, you wouldn't hit the compound until the morning, because you had to go through that process all through the day. So in the morning, in the kitchen was a place where you would meet the new guys that just came on the compound. But after breakfast, you had to go back to the unit and get in the uniform. You had to stay in your uniform from 7:30 to 4 p.m. That was your khaki uniform. After that, you could get in your sweats or whatever you wanted to. But after breakfast, we'll go back to the unit, get dressed. I used to work in Unicor. I was the financial clerk in Unicor. We did recycling cell phones, PCs, you know, laptops and stuff like that. That was also the area where we would steal cell phones and stuff and bring them on the compound, because, you know, we had to make the call to the families. Right? But yeah, we'll go to work, and lunch we'll come out. Sometime rather than to go to lunch, we would go and lift weights for our lunch break. Come back, and day's work would be over at 3:30, and then everybody would go back. Then they had the census count. That's the count to go to DC every day. So that 4 o'clock count, everybody is in after the 4 o'clock count. Then the yard is open, and, you know, we would go out, you know, have parties, and, you know, play basketball. You know, you had, I was the commissioner of basketball during that time, and you would have your teams. You know, it's like being in the NBA. You know, it was really something. You know, the Italians, they would bet on games and baseball games and stuff like that, right? And that was the highlights of being in prison, the sports, because everybody was into the sports, you know, playing your tickets and stuff like that, right? And that's how it went every day. It was the daily routine. You know,
did the routine differ a lot from prison to prison, or was it more?
No, it's pretty much consistent. It was pretty much consistent. You know, you look at stuff on TV in terms of like the Italians. You know, on Sundays they would all get together and have their, you know, stuff like, and would invite you and stuff like that. It was pretty much consistent. Like I say, depending on what institutions you were in, the characteristics of the guards in prison and the power shift change. But the same, a soldier, but the same stuff, you know, was consistent. Well, as I said, I wasn't one who received a lot of visits, not because family did not want to see me, but because I was so far away. But when I did receive visits, the visit in the area was you would have your space, right? There was physical contact. You were never in a booth or anything like it, unless you were in the shoe. If you were in the shoe, you was off to the side, right? But if you were in population and you had a visit, the visiting room, you could eat, your family could buy you food, they'd take pictures. You had areas if you had little children where they could go and play and have toys and stuff like that, right? But you had physical contact. If you was in a medium security, some of the prisoners, when you come in on visit, you just get one kiss and no touching. They just sit in front of you, you sit in front of them, and you would talk, and then after the visit you get that other kiss and hug, and that was it. But the lower you came down, the more freedom you had on the visits. The visiting room was pretty good. And some visiting rooms were visiting rooms where people really enjoyed it because, you know, you could get what you call 5 minutes of fame. You could get a little sex or a little blowjob, as they say, right? People would block for you. You know, after everybody get up, people would block for you, and you could steal a, steal it. I wasn't. How you doing, sweetie? I wasn't fortunate enough to have that experience, though I desired it greatly, right? But that's how it was, you know. But the visiting room, it was nice. I can recall me when I did receive visits from my son's mother or my sisters who came to see me. I was always emotional. I would shed a tear because it had been so long since I saw them. I would receive letters and stuff frequently, but being able to see them and touch them, was definitely much greater than receiving a letter or even a phone call, right? And so when I did receive a visit, you know, I was on an emotional high, right? Because I knew that it would probably be 3 to 4 years before I receive another visit, right? Yeah, the visiting rooms, they were all right, and the guards, for the most part, was compassionate enough, right, to allow you to get more than what the rules and regulations allow. And then at times, some who went by the book, who did not bend the law, you know, and them are the ones we was angry with a lot of times, right? But that's how it was, you know. That's how it was. Yeah.
In other interviews I've done, because it was so emotional, the visits, they almost didn't like getting visits. Because
yes, that happened too. Exactly. A lot of people didn't really, because and I was that guy who was emotional, but I wasn't the one who rather not have the visit. I was the one who desired the visit, right? Though it was painful to see them leave. You know, I can recall prior to going into federal prison, I was in state prison, and my mother at the time was dying from cancer, and my sister informed me that she was bringing my mother to see me, and she brought my mother and my David Jr. to see me. And when they came, I could recognize my sister and my son, but I couldn't recognize the other woman. The other woman happened to be my mother. She had lost so much weight, right? And when she came in, I broke down, right, and cried. And when she left, I knew that would be the time that I would see her, right? And it was the last time I had saw her. But I did want to visit, right? And so, yeah. But I was one of the ones that wanted to visit, you know, though I knew that it was going to be emotional, right? Yeah. I'm so thankful for my son's mother, because she helped me to make the adjustment, you know, because I carried a lot of the stuff in prison home with me, even to the point where I was abandoning responsibility, right? In prison, you don't pay bills and stuff like that, right? And I recall her saying, "God damn, you know, you think you're still in prison?" You know what I mean? Because though I was getting an income, but I wasn't contributing like I was supposed to, right? Because I brought a lot of stuff home with me, you know? Even, you know, taking showers. In fact, since I've been home, and it's been almost 2 years, I have taken 2 baths that I'm so used to taking showers, right? Washing my underwear in the shower and stuff like that, right? And so I brought a lot of stuff home with me, you know.